The interrogation room was a box, its walls closing in with every passing second, the air thick with tension and the faint scent of disinfectant. Everything about the space was designed to squeeze out the truth, to make secrets feel heavy and impossible to hold. Fluorescent lights glared down on Jeff Pearson, who sat at the metal table trying to project calm he didn't feel. Inside he was unraveling, sweating, stomach churning, every nerve raw from opioid withdrawal. His mind raced, desperate for relief, but he forced himself to sit still. He clasped his trembling hands so tightly his knuckles whitened, knowing the detectives watched for any crack in his composure, any sign of weakness. This was more than questioning, it was a test of endurance, a psychological chess match where every move mattered. Detectives Miller and Santiago saw only a nervous suspect, not a man fighting his own body, his own cravings, his own fear. They started with small talk, their voices deceptively gentle, probing for weakness, hoping to catch him off guard. Jeff gave only short, guarded answers, building a wall of silence brick by brick, refusing to let them in. He knew their kindness was a tactic, every question a trap, every smile a calculated move to break him down. The less he said, the less they could use, so he kept his answers clipped, his expression unreadable. The humming lights filled the silence he refused to break, a constant reminder of the pressure closing in. The battle had begun, and Jeff's only weapon was his silence, a silence that grew heavier with every minute. He was determined to outlast them, letting silence speak louder than words, clinging to the hope that his resolve would hold. 2 nights earlier, a masked man robbed a 7-Eleven in under 90 seconds. No weapon, no clear footage, no fingerprints, just a terrified clerk and a cold trail. The suspect was average in every way, his face hidden, his escape clean. The case stalled until an anonymous tip named Jeff Pearson, citing his desperation for money. It was a flimsy lead, but the detectives latched on. Jeff's history with addiction became their motive. They built a circumstantial case, seeing him as a collection of risk factors. No evidence placed him at the scene, but suspicion was enough. The police needed a confession to close the case. They brought Jeff in, hoping to fit him into their narrative. All they needed was to get him talking. The interrogation room became their arena. Jeff's arrest was swift and disorienting. One moment, he was walking home. The next, he was surrounded by flashing lights and the cold grip of authority. The world seemed to narrow to the sound of boots on pavement and the snap of handcuffs. Boxed in by unmarked cars, cuffed without protest, Jeff barely had time to process what was happening. The officers moved with practiced efficiency, giving him no chance to ask questions or plead his case. In that instant, Jeff made a decision. He would not speak, not a word, not a sound. He would not give them anything to use against him. He knew the first words out of a suspect's mouth could be fatal, twisting into evidence before you even realized what you'd said. Silence, he thought, was his only ally. In the back of the car, Detective Santiago tried small talk, hoping to catch Jeff off guard. But Jeff just stared out the window, refusing to meet his eyes, refusing to break. His silence unsettled the detectives, who were used to suspects trying to explain, to bargain, to beg. Jeff's quiet was a wall they couldn't climb. At the station, Jeff moved through booking like a ghost. No questions, no answers, just a steady, unreadable calm. He offered nothing, not even a glance. He knew his rights and clung to them, repeating the words in his mind like a mantra. The right to remain silent was more than a phrase. It was his shield, his only protection. The right to remain silent was his shield, and he would not let it slip, no matter how much they pressed. He saved his energy for the interrogation room, where the real test awaited, a battle of patience, of nerves, of willpower. Every step was calculated restraint, every breath measured. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing him break. The detectives grew uneasy with his refusal to play along, their confidence slowly eroding as the silence stretched on. Jeff's silence was absolute, a void they couldn't penetrate, a challenge they hadn't expected. He was ready for the battle ahead, knowing that sometimes saying nothing is the most powerful move of all. Alone in the interrogation room, Jeff's withdrawal hit hard, aching bones, nausea, sweat. He fought to keep his composure, knowing the detectives would see his physical distress as guilt. Miller and Santiago entered, offering water and sympathy in exchange for cooperation. Jeff refused, not trusting their kindness or wanting to show need. He focused on the cold metal table, grounding himself. The detectives watched, waiting for him to break. Every minute was agony, but he clung to his resolve. Do not talk. His body screamed for relief, but his mind screamed louder. This was his battleground, and silence was his only weapon. He let them think his suffering was weakness. Inside, it was proof of his strength. The detectives shifted tactics, showing Jeff grainy photos from the robbery. "Look familiar?" Santiago pressed, claiming witnesses and motives. Jeff knew they were bluffing, no real evidence, just pressure. He stayed silent, unmoved by their claims. Miller softened, offering sympathy and promises of leniency. Jeff recognized the ploy. Any confession would seal his fate. He met their gaze, then looked away, giving nothing. Santiago turned aggressive, threatening long hours and hardship. Jeff endured, knowing his rights and their limits. Their tactics crashed against his silence. He refused to be baited or intimidated. The detectives grew frustrated, but Jeff remained a silent rock. His silence was unbreakable. After hours of psychological games, Jeff could feel the exhaustion settling in. The relentless questions, the subtle threats, and the detectives' attempts to break him down had all taken their toll. But deep down, he knew it was time to take control of the situation. During a rare lull in the barrage, Jeff finally looked up at Detective Miller. His voice was steady, unwavering, as he spoke for the first time. "I am going to remain silent. I want my lawyer." The words hung in the air, clear and deliberate, echoing through the tense room. The room froze. He had invoked his rights. For a moment, even the detectives seemed caught off guard, their practiced routine interrupted. Legally, questioning should have stopped immediately, but the detectives pressed on, dismissing his request as if it were just another obstacle. Their voices grew sharper, more insistent as they tried to regain control. "A lawyer won't help you," Miller insisted, his tone almost pleading now, trying to make Jeff doubt himself and reconsider his decision. Santiago, the second detective, leaned in and warned that this was Jeff's last chance for leniency, painting a grim picture of what might happen if he stayed silent. But Jeff didn't argue or repeat himself. He simply returned to silence, refusing to be baited or intimidated. He sat quietly, his mind racing but his face calm, knowing that their words were now legally meaningless. The law was on his side, and he clung to that knowledge. The power in the room shifted. Jeff had drawn a line they couldn't cross. The detectives, once so confident, now seemed frustrated and uncertain. Their continued questions sounded desperate, not strategic, as if they were grasping for any last shred of control. Jeff waited, patient and composed, knowing he'd played his final card. There was nothing more to say, nothing more to give. His resolve held firm as their tactics lost all force. The detective's words bounced off him, powerless now that he had invoked his rights. In the end, silence, now protected by law, became his victory, a quiet but powerful stand against the pressure of the interrogation room. The detectives finally gave up. No confession, no evidence, just a silent suspect. Jeff was released, exhausted, but free. The ordeal became a turning point. He checked into rehab, determined never to be so vulnerable again. Recovery was hard, but he emerged sober and resolute. Jeff started a blog and YouTube channel teaching others their rights. His story reached millions, empowering people to protect themselves. He became a respected advocate, turning his lowest moment into a platform for change. Jeff's experience proved that knowledge and courage are the best defense. He didn't just survive the system, he learned to fight for others. His silence became a voice for those who needed it most.